Okay, go ahead.
Okay, this is Coach Smith of Inglewood, Coach Jose Smith, longtime coach in Inglewood. This will be my 37th year, but we have the pandemic. I am now over at Inglewood High. I've coached Crenshaw Junior High, Crenshaw Middle School, Morningside High School, championship teams, men and women, LA Trade Tech College, super teams, LA Southwest College, super teams, which we've set records at each school. Tremaine is my relative on my father's side. My father is the deceased patriarch of the Folks family. He died at 93 a few months ago. Tremaine's father is Ronnie Folks. That's my cousin. Okay, now Tremaine, history on him. First, my history going back to Crenshaw, I've had Harold Miner, Mario Bennett. We've had Stephen King, numerous other players. Tina Thompson has played for me. We have a host of players from Inglewood who were under my guidance. Tremaine is the baby boy of the family. He attended parent. Should have been at Crenshaw with me because he would have won championships every year. But he attended parent, and as an 8th grader, we first saw him blossom. His skills were changing, his body was changing, he's getting stronger. And as a 9th grader, I saw the potential. And a buddy of mine, Rick Stevenson, who is deceased now, my best friend, longtime legendary coach, and also Charles Ellison. We all worked out of Rogers Park, which has all of the legendary players in Inglewood. Everybody knows about Rogers Park. Tremaine was one of the Rogers Park's boys. Okay, now Charles, as a 9th grader, Charles mentioned to me, you know, he's got all this potential, so we should push him to the limit. So I watched Tremaine in the different programs, Culver City and Westchester. Talked to him and we worked on some things, and initially, Coach Willie West, my godfather, was a coach at Crenshaw. He had a pretty good team over there, but what attracted me to Crenshaw, Willie West had spoke to me, didn't speak to me about Tremaine or any players, about bringing any players. We talked about me going over coaching there, but I couldn't coach over there because it was a conflict. I coached the Morningside girls at the time, Tina Thompson and all of them. We were a top team in the state. So what we decided, looking back at Crenshaw, I said academically, it has to attract me first, and then Coach Stevenson, Coach Edmund Fenoy, Tiny, my buddy. So we looked into a friend of mine, he's deceased, he was the girls' coach, his name was Major Dennis. He talked to me about the gifted and talented program, magnet program, which they had at Crenshaw. Major said it was number one. So by me being in education in Inglewood, we went along and we investigated the gifted and talented program run by Beverly Silverstein. I was introduced to her by Major. She stayed in contact with me. We weighed their program against numerous schools. I already knew Crenshaw basketball, that the godfather, Willie West, I already knew if Trey or any of my other kids were in his hands, they're in good hands. He's the best coach in the state, the best in the business. But basketball was not the number one priority. The gifted, talented magnet program, which is what sold me. And it also sold Trey's mother, who was in education, and his father, who was in education. Trey's mother was an administrator in LA Unified. She was able to investigate also, and we came to the conclusion that the gifted and talented program That magnet program at Crenshaw was just far above all the rest. They were right up there with the top CIF schools. They were going to Africa and other places. And so we came to the conclusion this would be the right move for Trey. So I groomed Trey into preparing him because we know the will to win can never be greater than the will to prepare to win. So I knew that Trey had to be prepared all around. Willie West knew nothing about Trey, or he knew nothing about what was about to hit him. Because once I took Trey, put him over in Crenshaw, a storm was brewed because I had all these other players from the INGLEWOOD school district who Westchester and other area schools had taken, who came right back to me and their parents. We had a meeting. And the same thing that we sold Betty and Ronnie folks on, the Gifted and Magnet program, my other parents were interested in it. So we met at my school, Crozier, and everybody was so impressed. And so Major Dennis, he took it upon himself to program all of our kids, beginning with Trey. And so now you had all these kids, and Trey was the number one in this group. And what I loved about Trey is I know Trey more personal than all of these coaches. He has never talked back. His father, Ronnie, is a strict disciplinarian, an original coach out of Washington High. So you knew Trey was going to be disciplined. And a lot of people don't know his father played for the San Diego Chargers back when I was a young fella. And we had a lot of athletes on my father's side, the folks' side. Ronnie and his brothers, all of them are tall. Trey has an uncle, Melvin, who is my cousin in Ohio. Melvin was about 6'9". So everybody asks where Trey get all his height from. It's the folks' side of the family. Every last one of them, my father died, he was 6'2". Every last one of them, 6'2" to 6'9", and all of them had super big feet. My father wore a size 16 shoe. He has nephews. Melvin probably wears an 18 or 20. Trey has big feet. All of the folks are tall with big feet. Everybody who knows about the Folks family know that they have big hands and big feet, and they're tall. My father's characteristics, who was the younger brother of Trey's grandfather, my Uncle Abe, who died, all of them had huge basketball, football hands where they can palm the ball so easily. Great hands. And this is where Trey gets his hands from. Everybody would ask me, how does Trey have them big hands and he can jump up? And Trey used to catch lobs at Crenshaw. Some of the most spectacular basketball games I had ever seen. And I came out of Manual Arts Toilers 1981. I played quarterback, and we had a super basketball team, and Dwayne Poley was one of my best friends. We're still tight today. And we put on a show at the sports arena against Crenshaw where Dwayne went for 41. But when Dwayne saw Tremaine and his son Little Dwayne, leapers. We watched Tremaine in some games. Tommy Davis was the point guard at Crenshaw. I believe that was Tremaine's senior year. And Tommy Davis would dribble. He was the best little dribbler, ball handler in the city. They would press him. He would spin right, spin left, get to half court. The boy was throwing lobs from half court. And Tremaine would run from the corner, reverse dunk on two other players on the other team. And I used to tell him after the game, you better stop before you break your neck. because it was so scary and phenomenal. NBA dunks in the 12th grade. And I ain't talking about over guys who can't play. One of the greatest high school games you want to see is when Tremaine them traveled to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Me and Rick had the opportunity to go. Rick was with the coaching staff, he and Tiny. And I flew in with another buddy of mine who's deceased, Alan Neal. And this is the first time we got a look at Kevin Garnett, Felipe Lopez. All these teams, the great Bobby Hurley, his daddy was the coach at St. Anthony's in New Jersey. They had the smallest varsity team I had ever seen, with their center was 6'2". Crenshaw had, hang on one second. Crenshaw had, their center was Leon, who tore down the backboards in Thousand Oaks earlier before they left. They had him and Tremaine. They had Raymond. Crenshaw had a front line of about maybe 6'8", 6'7", 6'7". And then they had wing shooters who were 6'6". And Tommy Davis, the only small man at the point guard. Chris Johnson, all of them 6'5", putting work in. More post moves than I ever seen in any kid in my life. Marcus taught him well. But anyway, I watched Miami Senior and Kevin Garnett and them get destroyed by Bobby Hurley's team. The team that had all the 6-footers and the 5'8s and the 5'9s and the 6'2 center. I watched them destroy Kevin Garnett's Chicago Farragut, in which everybody knows how tall Kevin Garnett of the NBA was. 6'10", 6'11". He had another buddy with him that was 6'9", who was strong, real cut like Zion, killing everybody. Well, I watched Bobby Hurley and all of them destroy them. And everybody said in the gym, they said, y'all won't do that to L.A. Crenshaw in the championship tomorrow night. Y'all won't do that to L.A. Crenshaw. This is what all the East Coast fans were saying. They didn't know who I was, and we were sitting there just listening. So that night, the next night on that Saturday, Crenshaw and St. Anthony's played for the first time. The legendary coach on the East Coast, Bobby Hurley's daddy from St. Anthony's, against the legend from Southern California, Willie West. I saw guys screening out in that game like I had never seen people screening out. Bobby Hurley's team was facing Tradenham, screening out, throwing an elbow, hitting Tradenham in the chest. Traditionally, coaches teach teams to box out in this position. But they were throwing forearms to Tradenham teams screening out like they were in the NBA. But Willie was teaching techniques how to slip past those screen outs. And it was the greatest game I had ever seen. And Tradenham beat them. Now Tradenham get back home, you got to vote for who's an All-American and all that. And I was pissed off. They voted for Felipe Lopez, Kevin Garnett. All the players on the East Coast went for first team. They put Tremaine on the second team, Chris Johnson on the third team. But yet, Tremaine and Chris Johnson put a clinic on them East Coast boys, including Felipe Lopez, who was #1 ranked in the world. My boys from Crenshaw put a whooping on everybody, and Trey and Chris Johnson stood out against all these former NBA players right now. But Tremaine has always had great character. He's never talked back to coaches. And he's always had a winning attitude, always willing to get better. And that's what took him through Crenshaw, Cal, into the NBA. And I am so proud of him. Love you.